Well, good afternoon, guys, and I am back on YouTube after a very long hiatus. Um, Last year, I used to talk about wrestling shows and baseball's top 10 and whatnot. This time around, I'm going to drop the wrestling situation and just focus mainly on baseball and its top 10. Right now, I know MLB Network is doing their top 10 at each position, and I've tried very hard not to watch those shows. I basically want to give a perspective on the top 10 from stat wise and, in my opinion, who I would want in that position if I had to pick a position player for that spot. So, without further ado, this year I also got some help from my buddy Anthony, who also knows baseball just as much as I do. So, his opinion also went into this list. We're not perfect. We're not no shredder from MLB Network. But this is the list that we compiled. So at number 10, we're starting with third baseman. This will be the first video of many for the position players. We're going to start with third today, shortstop tomorrow, and second base would be on the day following that. So starting off the countdown at number 10, we have Baltimore Orioles third baseman Manny Machado. Now, Manny Machado, I had a hard time placing him in this list. I mean, the guy got hurt, so I mean, it was his stat line wasn't very impressive. I will say that. But having said that, a guy who's less than 23 years old, I'm pretty sure, 22, 23, if he's healthy, a full 160 games, he will legitimately have at least 25 bombs and at least 80 RBIs. That, to me, projected for 2015, is a top 10 third baseman. Many people say that he should be higher. In my opinion, I think he's very close to where he would be. I had a very hard time putting him between 8 and 10, mainly because, I mean, you don't know. He could come back and be a star. He could come back and just be a flop like he has been this last year. So, I mean, placing him compared to others who played the full season was a very tough decision. But at number 10, Manny Machado, I have coming in. I'm hoping for big things from Machado, don't get me wrong. But this is going to be in my opinion, his breakout year. Next year, I'd love to see him in the top 5. But right now, he's number 10. Moving on to number 9 is Colorado Rockies third baseman Nolan Arenado. Now, I know a lot of people, before we even get into this conversation, his stats are because of the ballpark. I'm sorry, but I am sick and tired of hearing about how the Colorado Rockies ballpark is what brings stats. This kid, another young guy, in his first few years in the league, he played 111 games, so barely more than Machado. But he hit that 100-game threshold that I think is a big situation in baseball with a position player. His stats weren't outstanding, but I'll just read a couple of them off to you, just that I have right here. 18 home runs. You can probably contribute that to the ballpark if you want to be that type of person. But one stat that I think a lot of people don't understand, though, with Colorado and any other ballpark is, if the ballpark is like that and you can hit home runs and you can do whatever you want in that situation. But the guy hit 287 as a young guy. His on base was 328, slugging 500, 828 OPS. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the slugging is a little inflated, but you are in Colorado, so I mean, you're gonna get your situation there. But I think Nolan Arenado next year, he's another guy like Machado. I could see moving up the list because he's such a young guy. But having said that, Nolan Arenado, if he plays 150 games, give or take a few, whatever, I think he could be a guy. He only hit 18 and 111. In Colorado, I expect nothing under 30 home runs from this guy. The way his power is, his gap-to-gap power, and his double ratio also. He's also a guy that you could see, potentially moving Colorado. I mean, Colorado already has Tulo and Cargo. I mean, Nolan Arenado could be the next guy. Moving on to number 8, and this was one of the toughest decisions for me personally, was Aramis Ramirez of the Milwaukee Brewers. Aramis Ramirez is one of those players that nothing he does jumps out at you and is like, wow, all-star or superstar third baseman, or somebody where you're like, oh, he's definitely a top 5. Aramis Ramirez, every year, you know what you're going to get consistently. Between 100 and 140 games a year. He's going to probably hit 15 to 25 bombs now, where he is in age. But his progression, yeah, he's obviously, he's not the guy that was with the Cubs and hitting, moon shots every chance that he gets. But he's a guy, right now, last year, he hit 15 homers, 66 RBIs, and hit 285 in 133 games. Personally, Aramis Ramirez, if he puts anything like that next year, he's the same type of player as a guy, who I'll come to later in the list. But Aramis Ramirez is still a solid defender. He's not a complete liability on the field. I mean, he's not great. I mean, the guy's 30-something years, like late 30s, I believe, 37. But with the Brewers, he's not one of those guys where he's like, oh, he has to hit 30, 40 home runs. I mean, Aramis Ramirez, if I had to choose a third baseman that I knew what I was going to get, Aramis Ramirez would be one of my top 3 choices, because every year he's going to get for home runs, he's going to be in the lineup, and he's going to drive in runs, and he's still a name in the lineup. I mean, think about this. He's hitting probably, 5th or 6th for Milwaukee. That's a very tough 5th or 6th batter in a lineup, because he can go yard, he could drive in runs. I mean, he's not, he's, like I said, he's not the guy that, is a huge run producer, but he's still one of those guys where it's, he's still in the lineup, he can take you yard. I mean, that's where I see it. Aramis Ramirez, though, I'm hoping, stays in the top 10 next year and gets, run off the sunset in the next couple of years and go on from there. Number 7, the former San Francisco Giants, now my hometown Boston Red Sox, their baseman is the Panda, Pablo Sandoval. Now this one is where me and my buddy actually had the hardest, I think, to project his stats for next year, because he's obviously moving to Fenway. Now, let's not jump on our high horse, though, as Fenway fans. Adrian Gonzalez left the NL West to come to Boston. Everybody's, 50 home runs, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, but Pablo Sandoval is not that guy. He's going to be the guy where he's going to hit, 20, 25 bombs, maybe. Probably 30, 35 doubles. His RBI total will stay about the same. The only thing that I would see maybe increasing for him is, personally I hope, is his average. He hit 279. I'd love to see him get closer to 300. Be that big guy in the lineup, to go with Ortiz and Napoli and Hanley and all them. But, I mean, Pablo Sandoval, you got to reward a guy in a little bit here. 157 games. That body size, he should not be playing 162 games, but he does. He's the equivalent to like Prince Fielder. God, I hope he doesn't have the same type of injury that Prince Fielder does now. But, I mean, 162 games a year, give or take. You know what you're going to get hitting-wise. You know he's going to play good defense. I mean, the Panda is in Boston now. I mean, I'm assuming his stats will inflate a little. But having said that, though, I mean, some people don't understand, like, if you're in a lineup with a bunch of powerful hitters or guys that will drive in runs, it's going to be tough for you to get your RBIs. I mean, that's what I don't understand sometimes when people are like, oh, his stats went down, so he's not as good. No, he's in a lineup with guys that are also driving in runs. I mean, look at Cespedes last year when he came to Boston. He had RBIs total went way down because Ortiz was in front of him. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to look at it in that way as well. Pablo Sandoval, though, I will say, though, if he comes to Boston and does, 15 to 20, 75 to 80, hits 280, 290, I'm sorry, that's next year he will be a top 5 third baseman. I will mark that down right now. If he has that stat line, he will be in my top 5 next year. So you can take that if you would like. Moving on to number 6 in the top 10 is Tampa Bay Rays third baseman Evan Longoria. Now, this is one of the guys in the top 10 who I think stats will go down, and I'm going to explain why. Well, if you haven't noticed this year, Tampa Bay is clearly not going to have the lineup that they've had lately. And now trading Will Myers, Escobar, Ben Zobrist, all those guys are gone now. So in that lineup, all you have is Desmond Jennings and really Evan Longoria and James Loney. I'll give James Loney the nod. Evan Longoria last year hit 22 bombs, 91 RBIs. That's a very good stat line for a middle-of-the-order third baseman. His average, though, 253. I mean, really, Longoria, 253? You're supposed to be a 3-4 power or bona fide superstar in Tampa, and you're hitting 253. That to me is unacceptable from a 3-4 lineup guy like that. But his stats, I think, next year are going to go down. Maybe his average will increase. I mean, his average should be, should get to 260, 270. His walk rate, I think, will increase a ton next year because there's nobody in that lineup to pitch to besides Longoria. So you can just let him get to first, pitch to the next guy. His home run total, I feel like, may take a slight hit. You know, maybe we'll see him drop under 20. But I think his RBI total is going to see the biggest drop. There's nobody on that team that can get on base right now. Desmond Jennings, is he going to hit leadoff? Who knows? You know, Longoria could be hitting 3, he could be hitting 4. You know, who's going to hit in front of him to get on base? I don't see anybody on that team that can yet. I wouldn't mind if I was wrong. But in my opinion, Longoria's stats are going to hurt to be on this team. If he somehow got traded, you know, that would, first of all, be amazing for a Red Sox fan. Second of all, his stats would stay as they are or even better because he'd have people in the line to protect him. In Tampa, he has nobody to protect him. So his totals are going to go down, whether, you know, a baseball fan likes it or doesn't. In Tampa, you fans don't show up anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But Longoria could be a guy where, you know, you could see him slide on this list drastically. And I don't know what Brian Kenny has said on the top 10 third baseman or if he even come out with one yet. But I'm very interested to see what he says about it because I know he's a sabermetrics guy and type situation, but you also have to see who else is in the lineup. I mean, look at what happens, you know, to guys like Ortiz when Manny left, you know. He got walked all day. So, you know, you could see the same situation with Longoria. Moving on to the top 5. So now we're getting into the, you know, upper threshold of third baseman here. I'm going with Texas's third baseman, Adrian Beltre. Now, Adrian Beltre is, in my opinion, a bona fide future Hall of Famer. This guy hit 324 last year. 324 for a guy who's, you know, aging. I don't know how he's doing this, but he's aging better. Like, he in his late 20s, early 30s, he wasn't all that good. He was in Seattle. I'll give him a little, you know, pass for that one. Came to Boston, found his life again, and, you know, went to Texas, and he's dominating. You know, his home run totals, 19 home runs, 77 RBIs, isn't amazing. But at third base, though, we're also in a new generation, really. A third baseman is not the, you know, 35, 40 home run guys anymore. So I would say that he is the type of guy where it's like, oh, well, Beltre hits you 19 to 20 home runs. That, to me, is an all-star third baseman now in baseball. He's Gold Glove third baseman. He has an arm that's unbelievable. And he doesn't miss many games. I mean, 148 games last year, and he's aging, you know. I'm pretty sure I want to say he's 35, 36. So, I mean, if we can get 3 or 4 more good years out of him, you know, Beltre's bona fide Hall of Famer. And if anybody that doesn't believe that, well, check the stats because he's close to 3,000 hits, and we all know what that means. I also could see Beltre falling off as well, which, like Longoria, Beltre does not have much in that lineup. I mean, Prince Fielder, we don't know what we're going to get back from him. Shin-Soo Choo usually hits in front of him, so that might help his RBIs a little bit. But who's hitting after him? I mean, Josh Hamilton's not there anymore, I'll tell you that. And he, you know, he could see a lot of bad pitches. It's the reality of in baseball now. But I really hope Beltre doesn't fall off or age horribly from here on out. I'd love to see Beltre in the Hall of Fame, and next year I really hope I can put him in my top 5 again, but if not, you know, that's how it works. Moving on to number 4, a guy who is pretty much a Billy Bean product, if there was any type situation, and I'm talking about Josh Donaldson of now the Toronto Blue Jays. You know, he's going into a new ballpark where, I mean, last year, let's just look at his stats in Oakland. 29 home runs and 98 RBIs in Oakland. Think about that for a second. 29 home runs, 98 RBIs. Now, he's going to a lineup in Toronto where home runs, for some odd reason in Toronto, go crazy. So he has Encarnacion and Batista around him. I believe Donaldson's home run total will go way up. Now, don't look at me and say, like, oh, he's going to hit 40. It's not going to happen. But do I see maybe a 33 to 35 home run guy next year? Yes, I do. Do I see a guy who's going to get over 100 RBIs? Maybe. It's very unlikely because of Batista and Encarnacion. But when it comes to Josh Donaldson, though, I mean, he's you know, he's an all-star third baseman. You can't deny that whatsoever. I think he got punished, not punished, but like for being in Oakland for, you know, the amount of years that he was and how good he was for those couple years lately, you know, going to a ballpark like Toronto, I could see some big numbers coming out of Donaldson. Personally, I'm trying to get on my fantasy team, but that's a whole different story. One thing that I do not like, though, about Donaldson, and this is just me picking apart things, is his batting average. And I know a lot of people don't look at batting average anymore. I know they look at WAR and all those advanced sabermetrics. But when it comes to average, Josh Donaldson actually has the second worst batting average on this list to Evan Longoria, and I put him at top 4. But I mean, I'm sorry, you can't overlook the fact that he's going to be potentially over 30 home runs next year with Toronto. You just can't. I'm sorry. It's the nature of the beast. I don't. Josh Johnson's glove is solid. It's not, it's not one of those guys that's like, oh, don't hit the ball over there. You're out. No, he's a solid third baseman. But next year, in 2015, I'm assuming he's going to be. His defense will probably go down, I believe, because of the turf as well. I mean, but I don't know how he's going to adjust to that. So that's, forever to be seen. Moving on to number 3 is a newbie, or not really newbie to third base, but he hasn't been playing there in the last couple of years, and that's Washington Nationals third baseman Anthony Rendon. He played second base last year for them, while Zimmerman played third. But with Zimmerman moving to first with LaRoche leaving, Rendon gets third base back. This guy was a stud last year, hitting .287, 21 home runs, 83 RBIs, and 17 stolen bases. Anthony Rendon walks into the third base locker room and jumps to number 3. I mean, to me, he's a very young guy too. He's only going to get better, I hope. 21 home runs though, I mean, that's amazing. And to think also too, that Nationals lineup, you got to pick your poison now. I mean, who are you going to throw to? And Anthony Rendon, I think, is going to get the best pitches out of that. He's a guy I could see his average. I hope his average can get up to 300 this year, next year coming up here. I'd love to see him hit 25 bombs. And one thing I definitely would like to see from him is his strikeout ratio go down. I think Rendon is the type of guy where he's kind of like a Dustin Pedroia type player, where he hits number 2 or 3 in a lineup, and he's that type of guy where he's gonna get on base, he's gonna be the type of guy that hits doubles and home runs here and there. But Rendon is not a guy that you're like, up 30 home runs. He's not that guy, so don't get confused. But last year was his breakout year. So this year it's pivotal. I mean, he's either gonna be turning into a superstar third baseman, or he's going to fall off a little bit. Either way could go. I mean, personally, I'd love to see him, challenge the next 2 guys I'm going to list as the top 2 for the rest of, next 3 to 5 years, but, we don't know. So, when it comes to Rendon, I think he's going to be an all-star next year personally, and 25 to 90 RBIs, or 25 home runs, 95 RBIs, can't go wrong there. Really can't. My number 2 third baseman, to many people, surprise, I believe. I don't know, maybe they had him at number 1, maybe they didn't, is Todd Frazier of the Cincinnati Reds. Now, this is Todd Frazier's breakout year, in my opinion. I mean, he helped me greatly on my fantasy team. But 29 home runs, 80 RBIs, and a .273 average. His average, I mean, his stats are, if you compare him to Rendon, they're just barely better. So, when it comes to Rendon and Frazier, I mean, I had a rough time picking them, I'm not going to lie. But Frazier, to me, is now a bona fide star third baseman. Next year, if he can come up, if he hits 30 home runs again, that would be unbelievable. Especially in that lineup where, last year their power numbers were down and he was the star. With Joey Votto coming back, Jay Bruce hopefully being somewhat of himself, and Brandon Phillips also coming back. And with Devin Mesoraco also breaking out with Billy Hamilton, Todd Frazier may be the guy that really gets a lot of the good pitches and, can hit 30 to 35 out of the ballpark. Now, having said that, I mean, I think his RBI total will stay where it is, around 80, 85 maybe, because of how many guys are in that lineup. But, personally, I think Rendon is going to, not Rendon, excuse me, Frazier is now a star in third base. I had a very hard time not putting him number 1, but as I analyzed more of the things with number 1, sorry Frazier, you're not number 1, at least not this year. When it comes to number 1, many people will call him underrated. Some will call him underpaid. I'm just going to call him the best third baseman in baseball, if that's all right with you. A guy who just signed a nice extension with Seattle, and I'm glad that he's staying there because, I mean, he's one of the only guys I've ever seen that flourishes hitting in Seattle, so good for him. But I'm picking third baseman Kyle Seager. He hit 25 bombs last year, 96 RBIs, and hit 268. This is his breakout year too, but my problem with the breakout year stuff, before we get into all that, is I'm trying not to put too much emphasis on the breakout years because that's very hard to do. But when you project next year in 2015, Kyle Seager has the highest ceiling. I mean, we could see 30 bombs. He's the only guy that came close to 100 RBIs. 268, I feel like that's going to go up with Cano and Cruz in the lineup. And the games played at 159 is unbelievable. A lot of people are going to say that Seager's not number one. That's fine. You can have your opinions. That's cool. That's what I'm doing right now. But when it comes to a complete five-tool third baseman, I mean, his speed isn't amazing, but I think Kyle Seager is one of the only third basemen in baseball that is a five-tool player. Gold glove third baseman, got the power, got contact, and. And he's only, I believe, 23, 24. I mean, I have to double check that, but I mean, we could see this be the beginning of, a really loaded third base core. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all still young guys. Even Machado at 10, Arenado at 9, Longoria at 6. It's not an aging position whatsoever. So get used to hearing these names because they're going to be in your top 10 for a while. So this is going to include the third base top 10 on my channel. Tomorrow will be the top 10 shortstops in the MLB, according to me and my buddy Anthony. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any opinions or comments, or if you believe that I, completely missed somebody or whatnot, please comment below and make sure you like this video and subscribe, because now that I'm back to YouTube and posting about the top 10, I'd love your opinions and love your views. Thank you.